This podcast is part of the Batman Universe Podcast Network, hosted by the BatmanUniverse.net. Check out everything related to Batman and the entire Bat family at the BatmanUniverse.net, including news and original content related to comics, movies, television, merchandise, video games, and more. Also, check out some of the other unique podcasts that TBU has to offer. Consider supporting this podcast by becoming a patron on Patreon. Even $1 can go a long way in supporting this content that you enjoy. Look for a link over at thebatmanuniverse.net to offer your support now. And now, on with the show.
What are you talking about?
I wouldn't miss this for anything.
Let's do this.
Hey, what's up, everybody, and welcome to episode 206 of the Bat-Fans podcast. My name is Tim. I'll be your host for this one, and joining me for the second episode in a row is Paul Herman. Paul, thanks for joining me again.
Dude, of course. This is like a lot of fun. I got to do like a bunch of shows with my good close friend Tim, and I get to talk about Batman, which I love Batman, and comic books. I mean, come on, it's a good time. As long as I can fit it in my schedule, I can, I'll show up anytime. So yeah, it's an honor to be on the show, man. Thank you.
Oh yeah, definitely. Hopefully our schedules keep working out where that's the case.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so on this episode, obviously our last one was a huge one with DC fandom going on and recapping all that great stuff. And it's funny, as we're recording this episode, it's the second day of DC fandom that's going on right now.
Right.
And I don't know if you've been keeping up too much with it throughout the day, Paul, but it's definitely not the same hype level as it was a few weeks ago, because there's no way you could kind of build or kind of continue that with all the big movie stuff we got. So we kind of knew that going in,
right.
But at the same time, it kind of makes me think where maybe it wasn't the best idea to have a second one kind of this far off from the first one, to kind of keep it where you can have it on separate days, but maybe have it be on the same weekend, and kind of where this would be the first day you kind of build up momentum with the stuff we're getting for this DC fandom, which is mainly focused on panels regarding on comics and TV shows. And then the second day is the big one where we get all the cool movie stuff we got a few weeks ago. Right. So I know it's something where they're still obviously trying out the different formats, and it'll definitely evolve as the years go by and they decide to do this again, which I'm pretty sure they will. But it just seems like, they're trying to create that same buzz that we had a few weeks ago, but just because of the content is not as big as we got on the first one, it's just not quite matching that. And you just don't see that same buzz and excitement from everyone on social media the stuff that's getting announced. But so that's just my takeaway from it, as far as maybe next time they should do it as kind of a multiple day or weekend event type of thing, instead of spreading it out like 3 weeks from each other.
Well, I think part of it was that they wanted to keep the hype level and not overshadow the things they want to do today. And I'm not sure what they've announced today. I'm honestly just busier today, and that's one of the reasons why I'm not following along as much, because not that I don't care, because obviously I love comic books and I'm very interested, especially now with all the changes that DC is are going through with on their publication side. I just wonder. I'm kind of busier today, so I don't really have as much time. But that doesn't mean I'm interested what they're going to announce. And I think that's kind of the thing I hope they do, is kind of give fans an idea of where they're going structurally from a publication standpoint and creative standpoint. Because, we all love, a lot of us anyway, love DC characters as much as the film, or comics as much as the film. So we're very interested in seeing, like, where are they going? Like, what kind of stories are these writers trying to tell that, or whatever, you know what I'm saying? Like there's a lot that we want to know where they're going and what the creative teams are going to be. And there's a lot of excitement that happens at Comic-Con, in normal years, that we all are anticipating. And I'm hoping that happens today. I'm not sure if it started yet. Has anything like that happened?
Not really.
Okay.
Not that I've seen.
So, and that's what I'm saying. So I'm hoping that does change, because I think that's important in my opinion. So, but that's that's
because
my 2 cents.
Yeah, I know some of the stuff that they have announced that's kind of making the rounds on social media that I've seen. Just kind of on the TV side, we know that Doom Patrol just got renewed for season 3, which is cool news. I know after the finale of season 2, everyone was hoping we get a season 3, and it looks like we're getting that, or not looks like, we're definitely getting it. It's going to be an HBO Max exclusive now. And Young Justice season 4 has just been officially titled as Young Justice Phantoms. And I still got to catch up on the 3rd season. I know I sound like a bad DC animation fan. I'm just a Young Justice fan, being a fan of the first 2 seasons. I still have yet to fully watch season 3 when it came back on DC Universe. But so that was announced there. And then one of the big things that we're going to be expecting tied in with the DC Universe app is that Jim Lee just said in a tweet how next week they're going to make a big announcements regarding the future of the DC Universe app. And we all know changes were coming because it was previously announced that pretty much all the original programming is going to be moving over to HBO Max, and where it's pretty much just going to be a comic book service app, kind of, I think probably more like Marvel Unlimited. So I'm really curious to see what we're going to get next week as far as particulars on what DC app is going to be in the future. Is it going to be some where the turnaround time for new issues is going to be a little shorter than what we're getting right now? And is the price going to change at all? Is it going to go down because of losing the video media, or is it going to go up for maybe getting more comics content and newer issues quickly? So I'm not sure. I'm real curious to know what that's going to be, but I'm excited that we're finally going to get answers to that starting next week.
To be honest, if it's something where I had to pay, like, let's say I'm paying $6.99 right now, and let's say they upped the price, but you got the turnaround time on like new comics was a lot quicker. Like, let's say it's only 3 months. Sign me up.
Oh, heck yeah.
I would gladly do that. And I've talked on, and I'm not sure if I've talked on here or either with my friends or on maybe the MCU podcast with Sean, but I'm pretty sure I've said that I think that the future of comic storytelling could be very much, something like this, where it's, and again, I don't like saying it's an R&D department, because I think the comic medium is good enough to be its own. It doesn't need to be Hollywood's idea maker. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't need that. That's not comics' job. Comics' job are to tell amazing stories through the medium. And if people want to adapt them into audiobooks or novels or whatever, that's all fine and dandy, but that's not an R&D department for whatever. It's a medium that I think that it's valid through its own merit. Yeah, it's not as commercial as the other, maybe as a movie or whatever, obviously, very obviously, but it's its own thing. And we should respect that for what it is too, and not just be like, oh, let's have this idea, but think about how it translates into a film, franchise, or how, into films. No, tell a freaking awesome story. Like Red Hood is a great example, right? My favorite Batman stories ever. And that will be kind of hard, probably, obviously, to put into a film. Well, if they were to make that now, let's say that they were to do that now with what my ideas are or whatever, maybe they'd be like, well, I don't know if we should do that. I don't want it to turn into that. But if the DC Universe app, to my point here, if they could turn the DC Universe app into something to where they're letting these titles are going, straight to the DC Universe app, maybe, or digitally, and they're still, the comic shops are still getting them books, and that could be the collector's market, because again, I think there always will be a collector's market in some way or another, with variants or whatever. Like, so I think that what's going to happen, in my opinion, I think the future is going to happen where people like me, who I don't really care about the collecting aspect, I care about the reading aspect. I'll be mainly digital. Obviously, I'll pick up right now I was mainly digital for years, and I've been just now buying trade paperbacks for collection purposes, because it's nice to read stuff on paper, because it looks nice and it's just beautiful to look at, and it's just nice having a collection. And some people walk in your room, they go, "Oh man, you're a big Hulk fan." You know what I mean? It's I don't want to be, or whatever, whatever. So like I've read Immortal Hulk digitally from the beginning, but I just ordered the first omnibus, collecting the first 12, 15 issues, whatever it is. Because I missed it the first time I ordered it used, but that's coming in here in next week or so. And I'm excited for that. Even though I've read every issue digitally, I want a physical print copy of it because the art's beautiful and I think it's something that I really cherish. So it's something like that. So I think there's always going to be that market. I'm curious if DC Universe is going to do that. What you're saying, either put the books up sooner, or maybe it's a direct thing. Because even if it was direct, Tim, and they said, "Oh, here's $20 a month," I'd do it. Like I would do $20 a month to have access to the whole back catalog, plus it's pumping in new content all the time. Like not just new content like from 6 months ago, but like new content like now, like it's coming out now.
Day on release type
of
thing.
Day on release kind of thing. Yeah. I'll drop $20 a month.
And that just makes me think, now that you said that, I wonder if they would kind of do something where it would be different tiers of subscriptions that you can do with it. Where if you just want to have the back catalogs, it's the same price, $7.99. If you want to wait a few months, that's $9.99. Or if you want day of release, it's $20, like you mentioned. That would be an interesting way to go. I think a convenient one too, for give fans just different choices of what they want. If you those who still want to get the physical books, they don't have to pay that $20 tier if they just want the back catalog.
That's great. So. If there's a way to do it cheaply for them, and because here's the way I think it too, because and I was telling Chris from the Comic Binge about this when the whole announcement went down about DC. See, this is great. Tim, you're worried about what we're going to talk about. Like, oh yeah, right, it's me. We'll figure something out. We didn't even talk about this, and we've got great discussion going on.
Yeah, I should have known better. We've had too many great discussions on even non-podcast recordings when this happens.
Tim, Tim, this is no different. In people peek around the curtain. This is literally what me and Tim do. Like just when we we hang out and just talk. This is exactly what we do. So you're hearing basically a conversation between me and Tim hitting the record button. But anyway, but yeah, I was talking to Chris about this very thing. And I was telling him, I'm wondering if now the people who are writing and drawing the comics, it's going to be a little bit more controlled as far as, hey, what's the word? How am I trying to say this? You're basically the teams that are on the creative teams. You have a little more leniency as far as like, oh, you're not selling as well, so we're going to cancel your book. You might be able to let things develop a lot more now, because if you have something like a DC Universe app where people are paying the strict tier of it, you might be able to let these writers develop and these artists develop a little bit more to a point, as long as they're hitting their deadlines, of course. If they're not hitting their deadlines, that's a different story. But if they're hitting their deadlines and you see the readership maybe not go right up or at least the sales go directly. If you but you see it go up on your app or whatever, you kind of judge it a little bit differently and go, okay, this is starting to resonate with the audience. Maybe we can then say, let's do here's a great example. Blue Beetle, right? Mm-hmm. I know they're making a Blue Beetle movie at some point, but that character with the armor and all that stuff, I forgot what the kid's name was.
The Jaime Reyes Blue Beetle.
Yeah. Thank you. That Blue Beetle. If let's say a new team gets on that book, right? And let's say this digital service exists, and I'm paying, you're paying $20 a month, or let's say 20. Let's do 30, because I'd do 30. Let's be real. If I'm having
would that be your ceiling, 30?
Yeah, no, 30 was my ceiling, because if I had access to everything, literally day of release, without a doubt, $30 a month would still be like, I think that'd be worth it, because that way I can read everything. Like I could stay caught up with the whole DC universe. I don't have to be like, oh, I have to not read Harley Quinn now, or I can't buy, or or let's say you have a fringe book, I'm trying to give a good example of what's a good fringe book. I don't read a lot of DC titles off, just regularly as far as that goes. I'm trying to think for me, even Marvel, it'd be kind of like an Avengers for me. Like I like the Avengers book, but I don't read it I read it off and on. And if I'm cutting my pennies or counting my pennies, that might be a book I maybe wait to go on Marvel Unlimited, right? Whereas Immortal Hulk or Spider-Man are, I have to buy those day of, whatever. Well, and if you translate that to DC Universe, I wouldn't have to take out that Avengers book. If I'm paying this a flat $30 a month, that I can, and it's a lot easier for me to say, okay, here's my flat rate of books. I know what's, whatever. I can kind of focus on that. And I think what DC might then do, let's say if you do like a Blue Beetle book, let's say you launch it out there and go, okay, let's just see what happens. And people go, like maybe it does okay sales wise physically or whatever, or independently, like, without being on the service, but the readership goes way up on, DC Universe. That now you have there's something there potentially. You know what I'm saying? Like you kind of get to see like kind of where characters are resonating to, will they buy that or will they just want to read it, kind of a thing? Or maybe you build up your audience through the DC Universe app, and then all of a sudden, like they start buying it, independently, or it starts getting more of a, recognition. Maybe you see subscriptions go up, or people start buying that title, by itself, or whatever. My point is, titles will now have a little more room creatively to breathe, and I think that's important. I think the other thing I just kind of realized too, if you did something like that, you then would limit how many titles you put out per month, and then you could cancel. So you could almost like interchange things, like kind of start one title and then cancel one gradually if it doesn't perform. And you always have new books coming in, so people don't think that like you're just, having the same books out and you're not expanding. But if you do that and you kind of keep, but you don't start one until you have to cancel the other. But you know what I'm saying? They kind of predict that a little bit. If I'm making any sense, I don't know.
And it kind of makes me think where you kind of feel like you don't have to make such a big investment in a series.
Exactly.
You don't have to be knowing that it could go on forever. That it's something where if it is kind of on more of a limited run, then you could feel like you're getting your money's worth, like getting a story, but at the same time you can move on to another one while you still have your subscription.
Yeah.
And it's making me think, you're talking about the $30 price tag. If it were to go that high, how it would be worth it? I know I've said previous times before on more recent shows how my comic book reading is not where it used to be several months ago, and I'm just real limited on what I'm getting and reading right now. But I just remember how usually I would spend about $30 a month, or even per comic book store visit, where a lot of it would just be like several Batman titles and mixed in with some like a Green Lantern title. Back when I was getting Superman, Star Wars comics, Spider-Man comics, would easily hit $30, sometimes even more. So the idea of paying that a month, and you're obviously going to have the books you're definitely going to want to read and why you're mainly paying for your subscription, but at the same time too, having those other options to read titles that might have caught your interest but you weren't so sure on it or couldn't afford it and you missed out on it, it'd be there now, and that you can just explore the different titles that you normally maybe wouldn't have the opportunity to do so. I just think offers such a great unique opportunity for fans to have in this new digital marketplace and this monthly subscription based marketplace that it looks like they're going to be going on to, or they're already doing, but just having it focus solely on comics is going to be something new for DC. And I just think there's just so many opportunities for them to try new stuff here that, as we're talking about it, it's actually getting me pretty excited. And we'll know. Yeah. I mean, those who are listening to this episode when it's released, we might even have the answers already, because this episode will be out next Thursday as we're recording this on Saturday. So they didn't say when exactly this news is going to come down as far as their information in the future of the DC Universe app. So everything we could say right now could be true and accurate, or we could be way off the mark. We won't know, but
I bet it's somewhere. I'm not saying we're 100% on the money, or I am by any means, but I think we're on to something. I think there's we know that we all know there's already changes, but what I'm saying is, I think there's going to be some kind of perk there, because they don't want to drop the price. That's not going to happen. They want to keep the price there, but they want people. But I like your idea of different tiers. And doing that, I think that's what they're going to try to do. And I think there's going to be something. And I think that also going in line with what we're talking about, because think about, I was listening to a YouTuber about this the other day, and he had a really good point. And he said that, because Brian Bendis is leaving Superman, and I thought that was very interesting too. I'm like, okay, because that came out yesterday. And I guess Brian Bendis, had tried to squash rumors saying, "Oh, my run from Superman is far from over," and that was only 3 months ago. So, excuse me, sorry. that was only 3 months ago. So I think that there's definitely changes going on. Oh my gosh, something keeps falling, and I don't like that. It's my Darth Vader thing.
Darth
oh
Vader's
my gosh.
getting involved now.
Yeah, sorry. Vader, I'm sorry. Why does this thing keep going? Uh-oh, 1 second.
It's getting louder.
Oh yeah. Oh okay. Oh gosh. The Darth Lord himself. Yeah. So you can edit that out. Sorry. But anyway, what I was trying to say was it's interesting because Brian Bendis, said 3 months ago, "Oh, my run's far from over," and it's ending in November. So you got to wonder. There's obviously changes going on that DC's been doing and trying to cut costs and things like that. What I think again going back to the idea of the model that I've been kind of presenting to everybody here, you also have to think about if you get rid of a Brian Bendis and kind of, I'll bring up my YouTuber over in a second here. If you get rid of a Brian Bendis who is obviously making a lot of money, they brought him over to change things basically, and to, as a name to promote the books. Well, with a subscription service that we're kind of referencing, I don't want to say like you get cheaper talent, but you then can focus and give these young writers they're kind of like they're in, right? Like you don't have to pay them a bunch of money and say, here's a flat rate you're going to get for writing stories for Superman on this book, and here's a contract for like 12 issues or whatever. And then you don't have to pay them, a certain amount, and then you kind of see where they're going, what the viewership is on that book, and maybe you can kind of from there say, okay, you've developed a following. Here's an increase, and do you want to renew? Or maybe they'll use that and say, nah, I'm good. I'm going to do my own thing at Marvel or create our own book or whatever, right? Then they get the next person. They go, okay, let's get the next person to do, the next set of books or whatever. I guess my point is that DC can control a lot better, I think, if they did that. And that's why I would think like a $20 or $30 a month price point and do less books. You'd be able to control as far as like how much your people are making, and you can kind of, I'll have to break the bank. And again, more freedom to tell different kinds of stories because of that. You don't have to be making a ton of money. But I think the one drawback, if you're someone who likes the idea of having like 30, 40 books a month, I think if they did something like that, you're looking at from like, let's say you had the New 52, right? Well, I would say if they're doing the equivalent of that with a subscription service, like what we're talking about, I'd say go from like 52 to probably like maybe 20. Maybe 20. I think 20 seems high. So it would be a lot more limited. But what I bring back to what the YouTuber was saying, he thought that if Brian Bendis does stick around, that it would be like the Black Label group, like Jeff Johns, Three Jokers, and where it's a little more prestige and a little more promotional. And I'm like, and that's where I think that might be where they're going, where those books, these big, like higher, like these big names of comics, like Jeff Johns or Jim Lee or whatever, they put out these big profile books and they promote them, and those don't directly go to the app right away.
Yeah,
but
I could totally see that.
Now that makes a lot more sense. And I think to me, that's a fair trade-off. Keep giving me the DC, what the continuity is, keep getting that in my veins. And in these other books that are a little more, let's say they're Elseworlds or they're in their continuity, but they're like a little more of a bigger deal, like the crossover kind of thing. And you put it out as either a trade or, like a Three Jokers where it's like bigger than a regular comic, but or a Doomsday Clock, something like that. There's money to be made there. And I think that's when you wait to put that on the app. So I think that is, and again, that's not my idea. It's someone else's idea. I'm not taking credit for that, but I think that's where it could be going, because the monthly comic format is there. It's still, people are like me and everywhere are invested, and they want it. They want these regular stories. They love the continuity. They love the binge. I mean, binging culture has always been there, but now the technology is there to give it to us all the time. That's why you have Marvel Unlimited, Netflix, and all this stuff, because people love to go deep dive into stuff, and I'm no different. You're no different. The people listening to the show, I'm assuming you love, not saying you want to binge like a Daredevil show when it gets released in one day. That's not what I'm saying. But when you get into something, like if you finally discover, God forbid, Booster Gold, and you want to just read every comic of Booster Gold and watch every movie of Booster Gold, you have that option. And I think the thing is with comics, it's so much fun to do. And I think once you get into that world, you just want to go in deeper on it. And I think that's what comics does to people, especially mainstream comics. And these apps now are more. It's easier than ever to get into these comics and go deeper. And an app and monthly comics only deepens that, in my opinion. I don't think it's ever going to go away. Will the distribution of them, at regular comic shops go down? Yes. Will they be publishing as many monthly comics? Probably not. But I think this is definitely the future. If not now, at least in the next 5 years, I think that'll happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. And I was going through trying to find the exact tweet that Jim Lee sent out about that, because he posted that there was an image with it. I wanted to check out the comics on the image that were featured on there to kind of give us an idea of what to expect. And because I wanted to see like if there were some recent issues on there, and there actually is in that image he posted that's kind of teasing the future of DC Universe. There's images of Dark Knight's Death Metal, which is a big new event going on right now by Snyder and Capullo. And there is Batman issue number 95 on that image. We're at issue 97 right now. So not exactly, I mean, who knows when this image was created and if it was intended to feature the latest issues that were currently out right now, but it is giving you an idea that it is current issues that looks like they're going to be promoting on the DC Universe app going forward, just based on this image right here. And it's mixed in with digital only titles like Batman The Adventures Continue. That's on there. Then classic backstory issues, Blackest Night's on there. So it's an image that's encompassing kind of what we've been talking about.
Really? I had no idea.
A lot of big back catalog stories, digital only stuff that's going right now, and some current issues. And so it just makes me lean more into that possibility where maybe if we don't get a day of release with the DC Universe app, it's going to be pretty short into what we're getting now, or at least pretty close, judging by some of the issues they have in this promotional image right here. And I was just thinking too, maybe if they're not going to do the main stories or issues that have a physical release the day of on the DC Universe app, I think that might be the case though for maybe if they want to do that for the digital exclusives like Batman The Adventures Continues. And maybe if that will be something they'll be focusing more on, digital exclusive comics that you're going to be able to get day one through the DC Universe app. And maybe eventually they'll work into the main titles that are getting physical releases as well. But maybe another avenue they might think of is kind of build towards that, starting with the digital exclusives and then maybe later on migrate the physical ones to day of release. But I don't know, just another possibility to think about. But I thought it was encouraging looking at that image that it was encompassing more recent issues in titles that are going on right now.
That's a game changer. And to me, that is a game changer, because if that is the case, people, then that gives people more of a chance to get current. And that means more people are going to invest in your product. And I think changing that idea is important. And I think that, like I said, I don't think monthly titles are going to go anywhere. I think there's going to be something where, and I even suggested this idea, Tim, because again, if I think that the continuing the continuity and the numbering is just it's so important to like these characters, like
especially these legacy characters. That's why when the new 52 got announced and I heard they were resetting Detective in Action, it was like, no, you shouldn't be doing that. Look what they did. We're back to the original.
Yeah. So I guess what I'm saying is, I think what they could do, because if you follow the sales, monthly titles aren't making a ton of money. But again, like just how I've said, Hollywood looks at this stuff as R&D to an extent. Now, with that, you're going to get, I think with DC especially, you're looking at, okay, well, if we want to keep tradition and keep these hardcore fans happy, what if they did, instead of doing a one issue one issue would be 30 pages, what if they do something where like a one issue is like a graphic novel? And so instead of like issue 1000 is only 30, or 1050 is only 32 pages, what if it's like actually like basically a trade which are over 100 pages, and it's like a little bit thicker, and you can pay for it individually or digitally or physically or whatever, but they put it out individually as, let's say, independently through digital only. Maybe it's a limited run for these whatever comic shops, but then you have them as trades. You put them out, let's say, a little more frequently, like maybe every couple months, like rather than every 6 months. You amp up a little bit and you make it a little more of an event, because trades still are driving the industry right now. If you look at follow the numbers, the trades are up. Like, people are buying trade paperbacks. They love them. Like, people are buying them. They are popular. They are keeping this industry that I love, and in what I think is the backbone of Batman and Spider-Man and all these characters that I love. They are keeping the backbone of this industry alive, and it's thriving. It really is thriving, in my opinion. Like, they're doing pretty well trade paperback wise. So if you put that all into account, DC, and again, maybe this is where Jim Lee's they're kind of going with, is like, you know what, like, we're emphasizing trades because that's where the money is, but we're still, they don't want to get rid of monthly titles. If they did that, the industry would be in an uproar. It would be like mass hysteria, and that would not be good for their brand right now, especially right now. It could turn into that maybe, but I don't think so. And I think that with these DC Universe apps and Marvel Unlimited apps, the future is probably releasing this stuff limitedly, or not limitedly, but like, at chunks at a time online, and then releasing them as a trade later on, but then have those all collect to be one issue number. So there'd be issue 1000. I know it sounds kind of confusing, but again, it's something, you keep everyone happy and keep people collecting and go, oh, I have, again, it's this issue instead of whatever. And I think people would be more apt to, get behind that, I think, than just like cutting out completely and just being independent stories. Because as we all know, as comic book fans and as DC fans or Marvel fans, one of the reasons we love this stuff is because it all connects to it with each other, and there's a continuity, and there's rules to things, right? If there's no rules, then everything becomes chaotic. And that's why I think continuity is also good, because you have certain parameters to go in when you write. So I think there's a lot of good things with this, and I think mostly good. But it's definitely going to be interesting what they announce.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up the continuity aspect of it, because that's another potential really cool thing if they decide to have it where we get the day of releases for all their comics coming out.
Yeah,
but the monthly titles, or not too long of a gap. It allows those who want to subscribe and pay that much to really get invested in the DC universe, because everything's going to be there at your fingertips to choose what you want to read and follow. That's because I don't want to see it get crazy level of tie-ins whenever there's events, because that sounds like it kills event momentum, in my opinion, where you feel like you have to read all these different titles to get the full story of this event. But if they do decide to do something like that, and all those titles are there for you and you're paying your subscription, you have to worry about having to pay extra for books you might not normally want to get, but have to get the full story of this event or whatnot. That'll be there. And even if, regardless of events, just knowing you have the opportunity to read every story going on in the DC universe right now, just to feel like you're fully invested in this DC Comics universe right now, because that is such a great feeling to have. You're invested in a movie universe or a TV show universe, and you're able to watch everything. You really get invested in these characters, the story, and feel like you're a part of it. With comics, sometimes that's not always the case, because there's too many stories going on that you just can't afford to get all the time. And with this opportunity to have all your titles available through a monthly subscription, I think it opens that opportunity more to get fully invested into the DC Comics universe by having the opportunity to read all these stories if you want to, if it's at a reasonable amount of titles that are going on for a month, and just to feel like you're fully invested in this universe. And then if the big event does happen, you're able to be caught up on most of the titles that are going on right now, and feel like you don't have to worry about missing anything or not knowing the full story when there is a big event that may happen. You have the opportunity to be fully caught up and reading these stories that are out there with these characters you might normally not have been able to get with your normal books that you would get on a monthly basis. So that's just another avenue. I think that's really exciting if they decide to go in that day of release for monthly titles, or at least a shorter gap than we are right now, just to have that opportunity to have all the titles there, and you can just be fully invested in this universe.
Yeah, and like I said, a great example. And I'm sorry we talked about this for so long, but it really is fascinating because I think this is the future of Batman storytelling, to be quite honest, and in this comic storytelling in general. But I think that a great example for me in DC is specifically is when the Rebirth happened, DC Rebirth, which
Mm-hmm.
was I thought to me it was more successful than the New 52 as far as I think creatively. I'm not sure if it was commercial. I don't think it was commercially. But I
Yeah, I don't
think
think it was as commercially successful, but I agree on the creative standpoint. Yeah.
yeah, it was a lot easier and better to read, in my opinion. That being said, I really enjoyed reading the Suicide Squad comics because the movie had just came out, and I am one of the few people who really liked or genuinely liked that movie and defend that movie. I rewatched it this morning actually, or I
Oh,
finished
nice.
rewatching. Yeah, and it was one of those things where, again, I think the first half majority of that movie is pretty good, and it gets a little wonky at the end. But I think that's where
Yeah.
the reshoots happen, and it really kind of takes a toll. Or at least in my opinion, maybe reshoots didn't happen, but it kind of falls apart. But I still enjoy it, but it definitely falls apart at the end. It's a little too much. But regardless, I was really into those characters, and when I was reading the Suicide Squad comics, I was really enjoying it with Rebirth. But then times, they had a big crossover with Justice League, and I was like, I don't know, and it became a good time to jump off because comics were becoming harder and harder for me to spend a bunch of money on, and I didn't want to invest that money into it anymore. So it became again, like, I'm a great idea for people that same day as digital for this. I'll pay more money and be able to, at least from a financial standpoint, juggle my funds a little bit better, knowing I have to pay $30 a month for a unlimited service. So it's a lot easier to manage my funds with I know $30 are coming out every month, opposed to, okay, I've got to buy a zillion books and they're all $2.99. Like I think anyone would agree paying $2.99 or no $3.99 for a comic.
It used to be drawing the line at $2.99 was
Yeah,
DC's tagline for a bit, but that didn't last too long.
no, it didn't, because it's just for printing costs and things. It's too much. But digital comics should not be costing $4. I'm sorry, just it's way too much money. So again, there's if you limit those printing costs, it becomes a little bit. You shouldn't be paying that much money for it. So $30 a month is, I think $20 a month is extremely reasonable. But that's just my opinion. So anyway, thanks for indulging us on this amazing conversation. I live for
Yeah,
this kind of stuff. This is awesome.
yeah, it was good. I mean, the potential is real exciting for the future of digital comics for DC. So
Yeah.
here's hoping that half of what we say at least comes to fruition
Yeah,
next week with that
seriously.
announcement. So needless to say, we'll be eagerly anticipating the news that gets released next week. So stay on the lookout for that, because I know I will be starting Monday. Who knows when we'll get it that week, but hopefully sooner rather than later.
Exactly.
But keeping on the comic theme for some of our news discussion topics for this episode, this is one I kind of forgot about because it's been so long since we've heard anything. It's almost similar to the Three Jokers when we first learned we were getting a comic series about that. But Tom King's Batman and Catwoman series has finally got a release date for their first issue. I remember this being back or announced the end of last year when Tom King was kind of wrapping up his run on Batman, but we found out the story is going to continue with Batman and Catwoman in this series. But after beginning of this year, we haven't heard too much about it, and now we finally have a release date, which it's going to launch on December 1st is the first issue. I forgot it's only going to be a 12 issue run of so it's going to be pretty much a limited series, but continuing what Tom King built off and established in his run on Batman between him and Catwoman. Now, listening to past episodes, how very mixed I was on Tom King's run on Batman.
So many people were. It's crazy.
Yeah. And I know you've read some of it, Paul. How far did you get in his run?
I got into right before the Riddler Joker crossover thing.
Okay. The War of Jokes and Riddles.
Yeah. I read up, and I actually enjoyed it. And again, I had to jump out, not because I didn't like it, but because I just was spending too much money on comics in general, and I had to, bow out. So, but I had actually liked a lot of that stuff because it was different. I haven't read a lot of Scott Snyder stuff, but some of the stuff I did, I thought was a little overrated, to be quite honest. So, yeah, I mean, but you know what? To be fair, I have not finished A Court of Owls. And it's on one of my reading lists. I have a big pile of reading lists. I have a digital reading list and a physical reading list, and it's on the digital one. So I really need to get to it. I've heard great things. I know it's a big, I've liked I liked a little bit of that one, but some of the other issues that I've read that he's done, I've just been like, eh. And some of the stories that I've heard about, I'm like, eh. It just, nothing really grabs me. And I think that it needed Tom King was a fresh perspective, and it felt more, honestly, it felt very 90s to me. And I say that in a good way. Like, I think that's good. It felt very 90s, and which I thought was cool. So, yeah, I liked it more than probably most people, but I realized that it wasn't for everyone either.
Yeah, like I said, very hit and miss for some of the choices he'd make as far as Batman's characterization. But this one, to be honest, right off the gate when this was announced, it was something that I probably wasn't going to be picking up right away, and just kind of wait to see how the story progresses and kind of the reaction towards it, because the way things were left with the Batman Catwoman relationship wasn't my favorite. There was some good stuff that he did with there, which going into what we're going to get in this story is actually some that he established in his Batman Annual #2, where it was kind of showed the future of Batman, or Bruce and Selina, as an older couple, and we actually see Bruce die of old age in that story, and seeing Selina's reaction to that. That was something I thought he handled really well, if that was to be the case in their future, and that they were to stay together. And that's going to be something that's going to continue in this Batman and Catwoman story, because it's going to take the place over 3 different timelines. We're going to get one that's in the present, and then one that's going to be in the past of their kind of around their first meeting. That was actually another thing I really liked that Tom King played off of, as far as what was actually their first encounter. Was it the one from the old Golden Age stories of Batman first encountering Catwoman as a thief on a yacht? Or was it the year one established continuity where they just met on the streets? I kind of like how both of them were kind of telling each other, Bruce and Selina, no, this is when we first met. No, this is when we first met. So they're probably going to maybe give a definitive answer in this story, maybe, because we are going to get one that's in the past. And then I was alluding to earlier, we are going to get one that's going to be set in the future, where we're going to see what Selina is up to after Bruce has died of old age. But the thing that has gotten me most excited about wanting to read the series is that Andrea Beaumont, aka the Phantasm, is going to be introduced into this main continuity line. And I am really excited to see what Tom King's going to do with that character, because I know she's shown up in Batman the Animated Series tie-in comics. She made a presence in the Great Batman Beyond 2.0 comics by Kyle Higgins. But as far as I know, I don't think she's been brought into any main DC Comics continuity. Maybe some alter universe ones where she showed up, but I believe this is the first time she's going to be showing up in the main continuity, and that has me excited. She's such a great character from Mask of the Phantasm, and it is something that in the official description it said Beaumont returns to call into question how each character chooses to operate in their costume and personal lives, and any move by the Phantasm could change the fate of Bruce and Selina's future. So I think they are playing up that Andrea was one of Bruce's exes, kind of like she was in the Phantasm or Mask of the Phantasm. But just the idea of bringing this character into the main continuity is something I'm really excited about, and can't wait to see just her characterization, her costume as the Phantasm. Is it still going to have that same classic look? Which I hope it does, because it's such an awesome costume, and I don't think you can improve on it too much than what's already been established. So that's kind of what has me real excited for that. And if she wasn't a part of it, it might be some where I just kind of wait to read the story later on. But I'll probably be getting the first issue once it launches, and who knows, maybe it will be part of the DC Universe app subscription service if they're going to do the day-to-day release that we're talking about.
Well, kind of going back to that for a second, I think this could be one of those things where that doesn't come out right away, because it is kind of more of a special. Tom King's a little more of a name kind of idea. Because isn't this also not necessarily a part of the regular continuity, if I'm not mistaken?
Kind of in that interview where he's talking about, he was kind of describing how this is his Dark Knight Returns, where he could do kind of not whatever he wants, but have a little more liberties than it being not in the main continuity. It's like it is and it isn't type of thing, because obviously he's picking up from what was established in his main run.
Sure, right.
I think it's going to be one of those things where they'll pick and choose. If all of it's great, they probably will put it in the main continuity. If not, maybe they'll ignore some of it.
Got you. Okay.
You're kind of hearing the same talk about Three Jokers right now. There's some people who I think are questioning if it is part of the main continuity, since we haven't seen too much connections or maybe even fallouts from it. So we'll have to wait to see when that's wrapped up. But I'm kind of putting it in that same cap because I'm looking at the Three Jokers in continuity.
Me too. Yeah, exactly.
And for right now, I'm going to look at this one as being part of the main continuity as well until something gets established otherwise.
No, I'm with you on that one. No, I am one, to be honest, I didn't really care. I wasn't like, I need to read this before I heard about the Phantasm returning or coming into, whatever. But now with that announcement, I was like, okay, I'll definitely be reading this because I love Mask of the Phantasm. The Phantasm costume is, I think, just amazing. Yeah. And it just blows me away that she hasn't showed up sooner. Like, seriously, like what is DC thinking? Like, what are these writers like? Oh, we have better ideas. Like, I get you have better ideas, but dude, like, seriously, this is a great character. Put her in this thing, man.
Yeah, I kind of like how Harley has become now such a staple in the main DC universe continuity.
Exactly.
You could have done the same with the Phantasm. Yeah. Easily.
Yeah. This is going to be interesting. I think, again, going back to a little bit of what we talked about before, there's going to be a lot. This success could, again, be tied to what they are maybe doing in the future. So I'm very curious, but the Phantasm is the reason I'm reading this book, straight up. That's the only reason I'm reading this book.
Yeah, pretty much right there with you. So December 1st, we'll hopefully get our first look at the Phantasm in the main DC Comics Batman continuity story. And so moving on from the comics, some movie news, and sadly, it's not good movie news that we're going to be talking about. First up, just last week, once the Batman production just got going, it had to unfortunately shut down its production again because there was someone who tested positive for COVID, and that person was none other than Robert Pattinson himself being tested positive for COVID. So production had to shut down again for the Batman, which was kind of disappointing well, obviously it's disappointing no matter when we're going to hear it, but just coming off that excitement of DC fandom of getting that first look at the Batman movie trailer and just blowing us all away, and then having production ramp back up again and having principal photography start and knowing there's going to be more of that great stuff coming. And then we heard this, and it was a bummer to hear. Obviously, hope first and foremost that Robert Pattinson recovers fully, so he's healthy again, and then eventually could start filming and production to start. But it was kind of one of those things where we were just on such a high, but then it took a little bit of a dip getting this news, which was a bummer. But we'll see if it causes a major delay, because I don't think it's resumed yet, because as far as I know, I don't know if this is like for everything, but the majority of places, whether it's movies, workplaces, even sports, where if you get tested positive, you kind of have to be quarantined for 2 weeks. And depending on if he first got tested positive when this news broke, it hasn't really been 2 weeks yet, or it was revealed, or he tested positive a few days before this news broke. So maybe it's almost after 2 weeks. We don't know yet, but production hasn't officially started yet. So we'll just have to wait and see when it starts again. And if it causes such a delay that they'll have to move the release, which may happen anyway, but just, still a lot of unknowns with it, but hopefully it just gets back into gear soon and there won't be any more shutdowns that they'd have to endure. But it was just a bummer to get after being off that high to getting the trailer.
Yeah, no, that it sucks. I'm hoping, I'm thinking that he'll be okay. Obviously, I think he'll be fine, but yeah, it sucks. It's really unfortunate, but it's the world we live in, and to be honest, everything's going to be delayed. I mean, we'll get in delays here, more delays in a second, and I don't think this is par for the course for the time being, and it's just we're going to have to get used to it. And I wonder if we're really if going forward, we're really going to appreciate these films even more now because of what we have. We haven't, a lot of us haven't been able to go out and see movies. I have a movie theater that's an hour away from me that's open, but even New Mutants. I'm a big Marvel fan. I've seen pretty much every Marvel film in the theater, the exception of Elektra. Literally the only, and now New Mutants will be part of it because I just don't have the time or the energy to drive an hour away to see New Mutants, especially with all the reviews it's gotten. It's like, if New Mutants was isolated and this was like one of the only comic movies you ever got, yeah, I'd be out there. But this is like dime a dozen, and it's not. And even though I love those characters from when I was a kid, I just don't have the energy to drive an hour away to go see it.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's the problem right now. It's because there's, again, if a theater was right down the street, yeah, I'd go see it. But I even now, I wear a mask, and I wear a mask all day at work. 2 hours is nothing. Trust me. So I'm not, yeah. So it's a little bit of a bummer. It's like, man, we're just have to get used to this. And I think delays with this kind of stuff this is not that big of a deal in the grand scheme of things. Honestly, this will be nothing because there's more delays coming, in my opinion.
Yeah, you're probably right about that. So, and as you alluded to, more DC movie delays has happened. Wonder Woman 1984 has had, I don't know if it's 6th or 7th delay now. It's getting pretty high up there, but it has moved from October now to December 25th. Christmas Day is right now the tentative release date. And this is interesting because honestly, right now, I don't think we're seeing this movie this year. Is going to be 2021 unless Warner Brothers, Patty Jenkins, they decide to cave in and release it digitally this year, which from all indications, I don't think they are. They're pretty dead set on having this be a theatrical experience first. And if that's the case, then I don't think it's even going to make its Christmas release date. It's just, I don't see things changing that much and improving that much to have a lot more theaters open and showing this to where it's going to have the kind of big opening weekend and release that they would want. So yeah, was not surprising that it got delayed again, but the disappointing part is that I don't think this is going to be its release date either. I think it's going to be 2021 unless it is released digital, which brings me to the question to you, Paul. Do you think they should just go ahead and release it digitally on December 21st if theaters are still not up and running by then? Or do you think they should just hold it and have it be that theatrical first release? Because to be honest, right now, I'm just ready to have it be released digitally. And maybe that's the greedy fanboy in me, but with all these delays now with it and just the unknown of the future, not knowing when theaters are going to be at their capacity to reopen to have the kind of opening that they would want. It's so uncertain right now that how many times can you delay this movie to where it starts becoming ridiculous and almost a joke in itself, and maybe it starts losing momentum because of those delays. So at this point, I think they should just, if it can't make that December 25th theatrical release, I think it's time for them to cave in and maybe really consider doing a digital release.
Well, in my opinion, I think they're going to keep waiting until the movie theater, because here's what I think. I think that Patty Jenkins, Gal Gadot, and the producers, and not just Warner Brothers, because I think if Warner Brothers by themselves would have put the movie out in theaters already or whatever to maximize their amount of money right now. AT&T probably would have done that just to kind of get as much money as we can, because we're not making that much, right? So I think they would have done a same day or at least put it out in theaters for a short time and then release it, for a 30, same day as theaters kind of, Bill and Ted kind of thing, right? Just to maximize, your losses, or as much, cover as many losses as you can. The one thing I think that, when I bring up the producers, Gal Gadot and Patty Jenkins specifically, I think there's probably not just money to be made from Warner Brothers, but I think there's probably money like on their end, like they are going to lose if they release it in theaters. I think there's a certain amount of points potentially that they all have that, like, they probably have some control creatively, or they have probably some control of when this movie comes out, and say, we don't, we all agree that we should wait. And maybe Warner Brothers wants to too. And they're like, no, we agree, because they want to maximize the amount of money they make from the theaters. They know this is going to make a ton of money, no matter what. Even if they do the same amount of points for, let's say they all translate into the same days, whatever, digital releases, whatever, it's still not going to make as much as it would in the theater.
Of course,
a worldwide release. So and again, I'm not saying I know this for a fact. This is probably what it is, but that's ultimately what it comes down to. I think it's not just Warner Brothers as a company, because I think if it was, they would be more apt to consider it, even before Disney, because Disney is kind of right now, like, they're in the same situation essentially. except they didn't probably have, Black Widow's not as important to them as probably Wonder Woman is to DC. So it's even more important for them to maximize the amount of dollars on this. But Marvel's in a similar situation because they're like, what do we do with Black Widow? Do we keep waiting? I'll be honest. I think Black Widow comes out before Wonder Woman and digitally. And
I think you're 100% right there.
And even though I hope I'm wrong, because I want to see Black Widow in the theater, I don't know. It really depends. I think because honestly, I don't think again, this is just my own personal opinion. I'm not like Sean Gerber, my co-host, that is super analyzes all this stuff and whatever. But to be honest, I don't think Mulan set the world on fire as far as its reception and how probably it did, digitally. Again, was it a giant bomb as a thing, as a launch for this? I don't think so, but it wasn't.
I think if the reports I've heard, I don't know how accurate it is, but I think it was in between 30 to 35 million. I think is what they kind of estimated it for what it did. And it's even kind of hard to gauge or judge if that's good or not, really.
Yeah, it's hard because, again, if that was opening weekend, you'd be like,
that'd be considered not great. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, and the word of mouth is not great either. So if you how much money have you invested in that movie and it doesn't have good word of mouth, your movie's done. I mean, really done. It's because here's the thing, you try to at least make half your budget, or at least your budget back opening day, at least, or for these big films like a Mulan, even Mulan, I'm not saying Mulan was giant money suck, but as far as, for Disney, but I mean, it's still 35 million on that, and it's just going to hang out there. And especially we all know it's going to come out in Disney Plus in December. I mean, come on, people. That was dumb. Why would you do that? I mean, I don't know. Maybe Disney Plus is that important to them that they have to keep putting stuff out. And that's the thing I think that we're underestimating, is that Disney has something that is they have more reason to put things out digitally. And Warner Brothers and HBO aren't exactly they're hand in hand, but they're not, you know what I'm saying? They're not the same as Disney Plus and Disney. They are and they aren't. It's really, really weird. And I just don't think Warner Brothers and I think there's more. I bring up the Gal Gadot Jenkins thing because I think they have more power, whereas Kevin Feige and all them are oh, we're gonna do this, we're in line with our studio, whereas the directors and the producers and all that stuff have a little more control over their product, and they're no, we want to wait.
Yeah, just look at Tenet with Christopher Nolan. I mean, that was all coming from him as far as wanted to make sure that got a theatrical release, no matter how limited it was. And I think Patty Jenkins kind of carries that same amount of weight that he has with Warner Brothers, as far as them wanting to listen to her and respect that choice of what they want to do to release it or not.
And again, I think, I'm not sure what I bet Nolan's is both artistically and money driven for having out there. It's I want to maximize the money on this film as much as I can. And so, with all that being said, I don't know if it was. It seems like everyone says it wasn't a success as far as releasing to a theater. But with Wonder Woman, I would potentially go see that, and Black Widow, I would maybe potentially go see them an hour away. But not everyone will. So it really is. To be honest, I think they keep waiting. Because in my opinion, and this is maybe just the optimist in me, and I've been saying this since the beginning. I thought things would be normal by now, but they're not. They're better, but they're a little bit better, but not much better. But I always anticipated that there was going to be, normalcy in some regard by now, but there's not. And I think that's what but I also think it's not too far on the corner either in some ways, where there's probably going to be a vaccine at some point in the next couple of months. And then that's going to give people more reason to go outside, and these companies, not just people go outside of these companies to say, hey, we can have more people, we can have more gatherings, and those things become a little more easier. But there's going to be obviously a lot of fighting, this vaccine legit or whatever. That's a whole another story. But my point is, I think this having a vaccine out will make people and have governors and things open up the states a little bit more because of that. Regardless, may not be fully, but they'll be open a little bit more once there is some kind of vaccine, whether or not it works or not. I think there'll be pressure from them to open, and with that, theaters will probably open pretty quickly, not quickly, but pretty soon after that. So I think that's what they're thinking, and that's why I think they're not going to release it digitally unless things get really bad in the next couple of months, where there's no way people are going to be gathering in big crowds anytime soon, as if they're not like socially, so civil, not civil rights, but civil rights, or just Black Lives Matter, things like that, like big marches, things like that, like that are all people run and are big crowds and things like that. Nothing big business wise will be driving these big crowds. It'll all be people driven crowds, and something that will be hard for the governments to control. So that being said, unless it's pretty much that's like the new normal now, where it's be limited people for the time being for the next year or so, then yeah, they'll come out digitally. But right now, I think that they know that there's probably slowly going to be change. It's going to slowly get better, and once it finally gets to a point where majority of theaters are open, and again, not just waiting for not wait for LA theaters to open, because I think California will be the last place these places will probably open. To be quite honest, but as long as if 80 to 90% of the theaters are open, and big cities are open, then it's coming out. And if it's not, and if they're not, it's going to keep waiting unless it's literally like we're looking at, like we're not having big crowds for years. Mm-hmm. Then that's the only thing that's going to make it change. And I don't think that's going to happen. I think there's going to be a vaccine, whether the vaccine works or not. There'll be pressure on the states that reopen at that point. They'll reopen. We'll see what happens. But that once they start reopening and the states reopen, theaters will reopen, and that's when Wonder Woman and will definitely be coming out at that point, because that'll be the first tentpole movie out the gate for people to want to go back to a theater for. And I think honestly, them playing the long game might be brilliant in the end, because those people might be so ready for a movie theater experience again that they will be chomping at the bit to go see Wonder Woman.
That's a good point too. Like the sounds, I feel like we just wait and wait. We're the first big release. We're gonna just clean up at the box office.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm coming from anyway. But we'll see. I mean, again, that's not really my jurisdiction. That's not my expertise. But that's what it seems like in my opinion anyway.
No, yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting to see how this all plays out in the coming months. But yeah, it just sucks that it's another delay that this movie has worked. We should have seen it already from its original release date of November of last year. So
it should be coming out on video by now, right? I mean, come on.
Heck yeah, we should have had it on video for a while now.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so we'll just have to continue to wait.
Yep.
But with that, that's some of the news and discussion topics for this episode, and we can go ahead and get into some comic book reviews, which is going to be Batman: The Adventures Continues, kind of a recap of both issues 10 and 11. And got to give the spoiler warning out for those who haven't read it yet. And Paul, I know you've got a lot of these issues that you haven't read yet, so I won't be going full-blown spoilers on them.
Thank you.
So I'll keep it pretty vague, but still want to throw it out there just in case for those who don't want to know anything that's going to happen to it. And for our rating scale for this episode, I think I'm just going to go with potential exciting possibilities with the future DC app. So we'll see if these issues score some exciting possibilities for that. But beginning with issue number 10, this issue was kind of giving what I was excited to see. Jason Todd as Robin in the Batman the Animated Series continuity. And just it was Alfred recounting with Tim Drake some of Jason and Batman's adventures as Batman and Robin, and just seeing him go up against classic Batman the Animated Series villains that in their designs that we know and love, like the ventriloquist, and then a big encounter with the Scarecrow. And right now, Jason Todd's designs is pretty much in the Dick Grayson classic Batman the Animated Series Robin suit. Just Domino mask is a different color; it's more of a red. But the style of this costume is pretty much the same, which is cool because Jason Todd in the comics pretty much had an identical comic to Dick Grayson's Robin costume there. So kind of glad they're keeping that theme going. But of course, the main theme of this issue is just seeing how different Jason operates than Dick Grayson was, being more aggressive, someone who's more tend to extreme violence with the criminals. And this was on display with an encounter with the Scarecrow, to which makes Batman really consider if he made the right decision on bringing Jason in. And Batman even thinks, oh, he's under the influence of Scarecrow's fear toxin during this encounter, but that doesn't end up being the case after he tests his costume. And Jason hears Alfred and Bruce discuss this and how maybe it's a mistake and they should maybe just cut ties here. And this obviously upsets Jason. He goes to get his Robin costume and just kicks Batman in the face before he storms out and rides off, leaving Batman. But my favorite part of the issue is in the present, where Batman does encounter Jason for the first time as the Red Hood. And just their dialogue here is just great. Alan Burnett, Paul Dini, they just do a great job of establishing the disconnect between Jason and Bruce here that is different than what we've seen before in the Red Hood story, where in that one, Jason was more upset of how could Batman leave the Joker alive after everything he did, especially killing him. But this is coming from a different place, more on the relationship of Bruce and Jason, of what they went through as partners. And there's a great line where Jason tells Bruce that, your problem is that you care about the way you care about people too much, it blinds you to the obvious. And for being considered the world's greatest detective, you failed to see that I was flawed from the start and that this all shouldn't have happened because of you, because you couldn't see that you bringing me as Robin would lead to this. And just calling out how Batman would have noticed this, but because that Bruce Wayne persona that he had and him trying to see the absolute good in Jason, he couldn't see the flaws that led to this happening to him. And so that issue ends with kind of Jason setting a trap for Bruce in the place where they first met, causing an explosion and making his escape. Not ready to kill him yet, but Batman and looks like the rest of the Bat family members are on his list along with the Joker. So it's not just him out for the revenge of the Joker like he was in the comics, but he's pretty much out for Batman and maybe not necessarily kill the rest of the Bat family members, because there were instances in previous issue where he did help him out. So it might just be Batman and the Joker that he's after here, but just good character dynamic stuff that is different from what we've kind of become accustomed to with Jason coming back as the Red Hood in the comics. And I appreciate them doing something different, but yet still having a good effect. So for that issue, I'm going to go ahead and give it 4 out of 5 potential exciting abilities that the future of the DC Universe app may have. And for issue number 11, this one picks up right away at the beginning of it. I was excited to see because we get Batman meeting up with Leslie Tompkins, who is one of my favorite characters amongst the Bat family members, especially in the animated series. And there's a great moment here where she's treating this little girl from an injury, and Batman just walks in, and she gets frightened at first, but when she realizes it's Batman, she doesn't get scared. And Leslie kind of says, "No, it's all right to be scared." It's okay. I know Batman would never hurt a kid. And kind of you knew that line was put in there because that's exactly what Batman did to Jason. Just kind of metaphorically, that was probably pretty painful for Batman and Leslie to hear a child saying that, knowing he has hurt a child, was what happened with Jason Todd. And just seeing the conversation that Leslie has with Batman here, just recounting the accountability that not only Batman has for what happened to Jason, but her and Alfred, and kind of being accomplices, I guess, for lack of a better words, and kind of encouraging Jason on this path. And now she's kind of feeling culpable and just guilty about what happened and just kind of feeling responsible for that. So it's more than just Batman and the guilt that he feels with what happened to Jason, but just for everyone else involved in the Bat family. So some good stuff there. And we do get more flashbacks of seeing Jason working solo and just really going after the various Batman villains here and just being even more extreme than he was working with Batman. But now that he is on his own, it's pretty much no hold bars. He's just going out there and just really coming to the brink of killing some of these Batman villains without not necessarily crossing that line just yet. So Batman's on the run, obviously the hunt to try to find him as soon as possible. And I do like they brought back a character who I didn't think we'd see again, and we haven't since his episode, but Sid the Squid makes an appearance, which was cool. Batman interrogating him, obviously from the episode, The Man Who Killed Batman. So it was kind of a fun nod to bring him back for the small little moment here to give Batman some information on maybe where he could find Jason. And so the big thing is we're just waiting to see that encounter with Jason and the Joker, and how, because it's been established that everyone's led to believe that Joker killed him in this continuity too, but we don't know exactly how that goes down. And this issue ends with the start of that happening, where Jason does encounter the Joker, and it ends with the Joker immobilizing Jason along with Harley Quinn. So it looks like they're both going to be involved with the death of Jason Todd here, and the issue ends with Joker just kind of throwing some white flowers on Jason, already kind of symbolizing his funeral, so to speak. But the issue ends with him being captured by the Joker, and I imagine the next issue we're going to get that reveal as far as what exactly happened to Jason Todd at the hands of the Joker. So I'm excited for that. I am loving how Jason Todd is fitting in the Batman the Animated Series continuity, which I never thought would be a possibility just from years of watching the TV show, and even beyond that, just with the whole DC animated universe with Batman Beyond, Justice League, no mention of Jason Todd. But yet, so far they're making it work where it is a time period that just hasn't been explored yet, and now we're getting that in this series, and I'm loving it. So this is another solid one. I'm going to give this one a 4 out of 5 potential exciting possibilities for the DC Universe app in the future. So so far, once this Red Hood story got started several issues ago, it's been getting better and better, in my opinion, as far as just getting to see Jason Todd's role in the Batman the Animated Series continuity. So yeah, I'm just really excited to see not only how it ends, but to get that answer as far as what happened to him with the Joker. So looking forward to that next issue.
See really quickly, do we see Jason like meet Batman for the first time in this series?
Yes, we do. Mm-hmm.
Oh, cool. So it takes place after Tim Drake Robin?
No, it follows that the comics timeline in that way. He was after Dick Grayson, but before Tim Drake. So we just get flashbacks.
So but is there, because I was never well, actually I take that back, because that's when they introduce Nightwing in that series, and whatever. But how does it actually establish how long it's between animated series, the 2 and 3 at that point? Or
not really. We haven't gotten. I don't think they've announced or revealed an official like timeline as far as how many years it's been. But I imagine it's been at least a couple. Like it would have to be like around the 2 or 3 year range, I'm guessing, at this point. But
I see
a substantial enough gap, I think.
Yeah, but I guess what I'm trying to say is like but even back in the day, like they never established how long a time frame it was. They just said, here it is.
Yeah,
okay.
They never really kind of had a definitive amount of time that passed between that.
I see. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. Right on.
Cool. Yeah, I think once you start reading it, you're going to enjoy it.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Again, this series is just cool getting these characters we never thought we'd see in the animated universe in this continuity now. It's just really cool to see. Not only Jason, but characters like Deathstroke and a few others. It's just really cool to see finally. And it just makes it that much better knowing that Paul Dini and Alan Burnett, some of the brains behind the actual animated series, are doing this story. So that's kind of what makes it all part of that main canon, knowing that it's coming from the creators too.
Sure, right. No, that's really cool.
All right, so with that, that's going to do it for this episode. Paul, thanks again for joining me on this one. Again, a lot of fun conversations in the world of DC.
Yeah, no, seriously. We were talking about what we were going to talk about. It's like, we're going to talk about something, and we did. We talked about the awesome, and again, it was a good conversation. It was an important conversation because, again, the future of DC Comics, I think, is not just as a brand, but the comics specifically is important because that's the lifeblood, again, of these characters, in my opinion. And I'd argue that it is extremely important. So not just the animated series, not just the films, but all that stuff. So yeah, I'm really excited to see where they go with it. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, it was just one of those things. Let's just start recording and see what happens. And great conversation.
Yep, so, exactly. Yep. Mm-hmm.
So as always, you can check us out at our host site, The Batman Universe, at thebatmanuniverse.net, or on social media at facebook.com/thebatmanuniverse, and on Twitter at Batman Universe. And you can check out our Twitter handle at Bat-Fans Podcast. And you can follow me at TimG311 on Twitter. You can follow Dane at Dane Says Banana. And Paul, do you want to give not only your Twitter handle, but plug some of your other shows that you got going on?
Absolutely. Well, check me out on The Saga Continues with this character I'm talking to. I mean, if you haven't already, then, I mean, come on.
Well, we got a doozy for our next episode. That's for sure.
Oh my gosh. That was really, by the way, that was so much fun. I was really happy that they enjoyed it a lot more. Because they were anticipating like a crap fest, and I'm like, no, it's not going to be that bad. The Battle for Endor is what I'm referring to, and you know what? They were pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, which is at the same. I was happy, but at the same time a little bummed because, like, man, I might be the only one who really holds Caravan of Courage higher than Battle
I
of
mean, I to be honest, I don't think so. But I just knowing their sensibilities, I just could tell. I'm like, I think he's gonna like a Battle for Endor a lot more. I could just tell. But regardless, I love all of them, and I wouldn't be surprised if he went and revisited it at some point. No, having watched Battle for Endor, he appreciates that movie a little bit more. I would not be surprised. Him being Kyle. I think so. But it was nice at least he understood, like, okay, I get it now. Like he understood where our love came from. And I think seeing the Battle for Endor, he understood a little bit more, like, okay, these aren't as bad. And if you're a kid, like, obviously he's a baby compared to us. I mean, he's like, what, 21? We're like 40 years old. So, I mean, come on. It's a little bit different.
Maybe not quite that big of an age gap, but sometimes it feels that way.
It definitely does sometimes. But no, I understand. But yeah, it's a great episode, I think. Jason from the Wampus Lair joins us. A lot of fun. So yeah, obviously you probably already know that about that show because he plugs it on here, but him being you. But regardless, yes, obviously I'm on that show, but our MCU cast with fan cast with Sean Gerber. Also, check me out on probably my favorite podcast I do, which is a comic binge. Just because I just talk about all kinds of comics, and it's just with my buddy Chris, and it's very, very loose and very just kind of whatever we feel like reading and talking about, and it's a lot of fun. So definitely check that show out if you're into comic books at all. Definitely, please check it out. Or if you're interested in comic books, but you haven't really like dived in to other stuff other than Batman, or you're afraid to dive into comic books, this is the show for you, because our whole premise is to basically make you really comfortable with jumping into comic books. So please come give us a listen. Tell us what you think of the comics we're picking out, and let us know what you're interested in. Maybe we'll cover some future comics with those interests. So yeah, check us out in the Comic Binge podcast. We're at Binge Comic on Twitter, and of course my Twitter handle is Herman22 with 2 N's, aka Pizza.
Nice. All right, so with that's going to do it for this episode. And like we say at the end of every single episode, we love each and every one of you with all of our comic book loving hearts. So see you next time, everybody.